Brilliant. Happy International Women's Day and welcome to our podcast on championing women. Kate and I thought it would be great to share our experiences in a short interview together. My name's Louise Maloney and I'm the Divisional Loss Manager covering our South food stores. I've been in the business for 18 years, having begun my career as a CTM in the food store in South East London. I live just outside of London with my nearly 7-year-old daughter and my cat called Sandy. Kate, would you like to introduce yourself?
Brilliant. Thanks, Louise. Yeah, I'm Kate Phillips. I'm an operations manager in Region 1. I've worked for the co-op for 19 years now in a few different roles. I live in beautiful North Devon. I'm married to Andy and I'm a mum to Ben, who's 15, and Ruby, who's 12.
Brilliant. Kate, our paths have crossed a couple of times in our careers, but probably most recently, we've had the pleasure of spending some time together in your beautiful area. And during that day, we had some brilliant conversations in the car. Some were really thought-provoking, challenging my mindset, as well as very much championing other women like myself. And by that, I mean single working full-time mums. During this day, we discussed many topics, including pausing your career to have a family. Kate, as you said, you've got 2 beautiful children, but do you feel at any point your decision to have a family halted your progression, or that you had to choose between a family or your career?
Yeah, good question. When I had my son, I returned back to work on a part-time basis and I worked 3 days a week, which the business were very supportive about, which obviously made a huge difference. It was great. It meant that I had a really good balance between home and work, and also just kept those dreaded childcare costs to a level that I could afford. I do remember, though, feeling that I couldn't bring a lot of value to my role, simply because I was there less time than others, so people who work full time. And then after I had my daughter a couple of years later, I then came back to work 4 days a week. And this meant that I was probably able to deliver a bit more meaningful work, whilst maintaining a good work-life balance. The key to the success here was just having great, open and honest conversations with my line managers at the time, just to really understand what was possible. My current role as an ops manager is probably much more demanding, and the nature of the role means that I feel like I'm never really off. Obviously, I do have 2 days a week off, but due to all the things and people that you're accountable and responsible for, it does feel really difficult to be like fully away from that. I'm working hard to try and break this down a bit for my own mental health more than anything else. And I've set myself some rules about how I commit to my Zumba class on a Monday evening, how I definitely have a swim at least once a week. And this is time for me. It's definitely still work in progress, though. I've not got this nailed to where I want it to be just yet.
I think that's really important, though, isn't it? And I think I can see so much about our career paths very similar and our journeys really similar. And I think that's probably what provoked us from doing this as well today. I think we also spoke about barriers of the working woman as well. And I think very much like yourself, I've always been really fortunate enough to have a manager who's really understanding of my situation and give me the trust to do my job and do it well in the way that I need to be able to do it. If I do think back, though, I think very much like yourself, a return from work, return to maternity leave after returning to work after having like grace from maternity leave. For me, it was really like, oh my God, how am I going to do 5 days a week as a store manager? So at that time, I had Grace, went off full-time store manager, come back 5 days a week. Childcare as a single person just wasn't going to be possible. So I thought about stepping down from being a store manager, but I loved that job. And I thought, you know, why would I want to do that? And I think it was really important that in my return to work discussion, it was just almost like a passing comment. I said, what about being a part-time store manager? And at the time, my store manager, my operations manager, I'd never worked with. And she was actually a female. It changed during my maternity leave. And she was absolutely over the moon. She was like, absolutely, yes, we're doing this. We're going to trial this. And I think that was so important and so empowering for me. So I did return on 3 days a week like yourself, and it was amazing. She was so supportive, really, really championed me working and also being a mum. So this probably really leads me on to what a fantastic career move you've made from HR to food ops. Such a big step. Can you talk me through the moment that you really realised you'd obviously made that decision, and was there anyone really championing you on to take that leap?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, so I've worked in various roles in HR for probably around 17 years now, and I'd always performed really well. Was really in my comfort zone in terms of knowledge and experience and capability. And a few people over the sort of last few years had conversations with me about my potential and what I was going to do in the future. But I was kind of like, that's fine, thank you. I'm happily plodding along here in my comfort zone. I've never been particularly ambitious, so I've not got the natural drive to keep going up the ladder and earn loads more money and get to the top. So I suppose that's been one of the reasons that I stayed well in my comfort zone. And when this vacancy came about, the recruiting manager had a conversation with me about the role. And at first I was like really, really skeptical. And the main worry was that I'd never worked in a shop.
Right.
So I was questioning my ability to lead a team of people in a role that I've never done before. And looking around all the people who do this job, they've all come up the traditional ladder. So I started as CTMs, become, whatever we called it, supervisors, team leaders, store managers, all come up that traditional ladder. So because I couldn't see anyone like me, I thought I couldn't do it. But I had numerous conversations, both at home and at work, and began sort of challenging my own thinking a bit more. And one of the big sort of turnaround moments was when I was questioning my knowledge of shops. And my colleague said to me, Kate, it's not about shops, it's about people. And that gave me the confidence to think, do you know what? I probably could utilise some of my natural and learnt experience from my HR world and transfer them to another role. We also talked a lot about squiggly careers and how this can benefit you as well as the organisation. And it was really real for me. And another thing I thought a lot about was my legacy and what I want to be known for. And these are big questions that you've got to ask yourself. But I thought about the day that I retire and that I'm looking back on my career, and I questioned myself to say, did I want to be known for someone who was firmly in the comfort zone for all of those years? And unfortunately for me, the answer to that was no. I've worked a lot on kind of finding my purpose, both professionally and personally, recently. And one of my key drivers in this purpose bit in my life is to make a difference. And this role actually enables you to make a difference to people every single day. And which, despite being challenging, is also really rewarding and fulfilling for me. I think in terms of this role, I also had a bit of me that wants to show people what can be done, the art of the possible. So, for example, I want my daughter to know that you can be a boss and a mum. I want people to know that you can be nurturing and challenging. I want people to see that you can have a big role and have commitments outside of work. I mean, don't get me wrong, this isn't always easy, and sometimes something drops. But knowing that that's okay can help to overcome some of these barriers and fears that ultimately we set for ourselves. I think in answering the question about was anyone championing me, I think the power of career conversations in unlocking talent is like crucial here. So I'd had great conversations with my line manager and the recruiting manager to really get into what my potential was. My story probably goes to show the power of spotting, nurturing and developing talent. And I'm really grateful to the people who've done that with me in order to fulfill my potential.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant.
So it's my turn to ask you something now, Louise. So I think one of the barriers for women is around confidence a lot of the time. And I think one of the things that it prompted me to think about when preparing for this was if we look back at our 20-year-old self, which was shorter for you than it was for me, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
I mean, it still feels like a lifetime away, Kate. I feel like I was very different when I was 20, that's for sure. I think I've really reflected this. I think it's quite often something that comes up, and I've watched a lot of podcasts on TikTok and things like that recently. And it is something that's really kind of thought-provoking when you stop and you actually really analyse something or look at your life as to where it is now and how far you've come. And I think probably the one thing that I would say to myself and probably even say to my daughter now is that life's just not easy. Actually, you've got a lot of things to overcome. So you'll experience so many hurdles and sometimes setbacks, but you'll also have some absolutely fantastic highs during that. But then you've got to think there's going to be equally the horrendous lows. But you can't ever stop believing in yourself. And during that whole time, whether you're in the really, really high or the really, really low, you are inspiring someone. And I think that sort of turning point, as I never forget, my friend was going through an absolute horrendous time, in that terrible time in their life. And she turned to me and she said, "You are the strongest person I know." And I'm just me. I didn't think anything of it. And she said, "With you by my side, I know I can tackle anything." And I thought that was the day that I kind of realized that without even trying, I was championing her to put one foot in front of the other, just to get up and go, like, tomorrow could be your day. Tomorrow is the day that sun shines, or that thing that you're striving for actually happens. And I think that was probably the biggest thing for me to learn, is that somebody's watching you do something that you just think is normal in your day-to-day life, but is actually really, really empowering to them. So I think that would probably be the one thing I'd probably continue to tell myself now, tell my daughter, and actually probably tell my younger self, that actually, no matter what setbacks you get, just keep getting up, keep trying, and one day you'll get there.
Like,
so I think that
using our superpower, isn't it? You know, because that is obviously your friend spotted that in you. That is, how do we all use our superpowers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so important for each other. But I think that also probably concludes where we want to get to today, because we don't want to keep everyone listening for longer. We want to keep that snapshot going. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Kate, for obviously the time that you've given up. It's really important that we do voice this and continue to talk about how we can champion each other. I hope everyone took something from it. And I think, Kate, I speak for both of us and say that if anyone would like to reach out, talk to us, just have a cup of tea or a virtual chat, whatever's there, whatever it works for anybody else, our door is always open.
Fantastic. Thanks for being a brilliant role model yourself as well, Louise.
Thanks, Kate. Take care.
Take care.